Call the meeting of the Executive Finance Committee to order at 3:12. Ms. Bradley, would you give the invocation, please?
Your heads, please. Dear God, we know you are with us, and we're grateful. Thank you for speaking to us through your Holy Spirit. Thank you also, Father, for your peace in the midst of all circumstances, and that we can count on you when our decisions are sometimes difficult. Father, we pray for world leaders, that they seek a world of peace for all. We pray for an end to bloodshed, especially in Iraq and Afghanistan. Hold our men and women in uniform in your loving hands. Protect them as they protect us, and bless their families, dear Father, and these young people for the selfless acts they perform for us in our time of need. Bless each person here today. Guide us as we make decisions on behalf of the Cherokee people and the Cherokee Nation. In Jesus' holy name, amen.
Amen. Roll call, please.
Jack Baker.
Here.
Kara Cowan Watts. Jewel Anglin.
Here.
Bill John Baker.
Here.
Harley Buzzard.
Here.
Julia Coates.
Here.
Bradley Cobb.
Amen.
Joe Crittenden.
Here.
Jody Fishinghop. Meredith Fraley. Here. Janelle Fulbright. Here. Sean Garvin. Chuck Hoskin Jr.
Here.
Tina Glory Jordan.
Present.
Curtis Snell.
Here.
Chris Soap.
Present.
David Thornton.
Here.
He helped her.
Kara.
I got her.
Okay, thank you. Next item is the approval of the minutes for the February 28th regular session. I'll entertain a motion. Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next is the March 10th special
Move to
session.
approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
March 10th PAC subcommittee.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Next are our reports. First is our financial report. Ms. Catcher.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
You have my written report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. We are in the process of finalizing our comprehensive annual financial report. We've printed about half of it and expect to get it delivered to the council house Monday. And everything is going pretty well. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Are there any questions for Ms. Catcher? Not? Thank you very much. Next is Cherokee Nation Enterprise, Mr. Stewart. Or Mr. Walcott.
Good afternoon. C&E's financial results for February. C&E recognized a record monthly net income of $11.4 million versus February of 2007. We're pleased to announce that was a 12.7% increase over the prior year's February. Despite the current economic conditions, the same store sales growth year over year is about 6.9% increase. And so, with the exception of West Siloam due to some of the construction, which is flat year over year, all the same store sales growth collectively about 6.9%. We have the expansions are underway. The steel and the concrete at Catoosa and West Siloam had its topping off last week. The HR side, we've climbed an additional point on the Cherokee employment percentage up to 59% through the efforts of senior management and the HR department. The total native percentage is about 72.5%. Turnover has come down the month of February, both year over year and year to date. We think largely in part to the minimum wage increases that have been enacted. And for the most part, March is tracking well through the first 26 days of operation. I think March is tracking pretty close to the budget amount. So unless there's any other questions on the financial, that's what we have.
Are there any questions for Mr. Wolcott? Okay.
Very good. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Next is Cherokee Nation Industries, Dennis McLemore.
Afternoon.
Afternoon.
Report you received is for through the month of January. At that time, we had 8.8 in cash, and receivables up 11 million. Inventory, net inventory is 9 million. Accounts payable up 10.3. Debt was 13 million, and that's on our loan from CNB. That was just recently converted and paid in capital this past month. So going forward in March, won't be reporting as a loan any longer. Our net worth at the time is $9 million. Sales total year to date was 27 million, and through the end of January we were experiencing a $1 million loss overall. And that completes my report. Questions?
Are there any questions for Mr. McLemore? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Last month, Councilman Soap asked a question pointed toward your operating budget, and you had indicated that you felt like your board was either had just approved CNI's operating budget or was getting ready to.
Right, it has.
It has?
Mhm.
Okay. Well, I didn't see it in the
Well,
consolidated
it's
report.
this is like January, it's kind of a month behind everything, so it kind of popped up in February.
So we should
Well,
expect to see an operating
I
budget.
don't usually put one in here, but I can.
This is
I can-
CNB's
Yeah, but I'll
consolidated.
just put that format you want me to look at on the budget portion, and I can start doing that, because we haven't reported it right here. Okay?
Yeah, and
Yeah,
Chris, this is pursuant to your question from last month on the budget.
Mr. Baker.
And what was the amount that CNB forgave or
we had 13.3, and there's like 1.6 that's still there. We had a borrowing base. We kind of operated as an arm's length transaction, and we had a borrowing base. And when our receivables and inventories didn't support the 15 million, they withdrew that back, and it's my understanding it's still available to us.
say again?
It's my understanding that it's still available to us. But the conversion amount was 13.3 on our book. They may be converting the whole thing on theirs, because we haven't received that transaction. It'll be made in March, at least.
Thank you.
Yeah. Are there any other questions? Thank you, Mr. McLemore. Next, Cherokee Nation Business, Mr. Carson.
Good afternoon. It has been a busy few weeks for us at C&B. Of course, earlier this week we received permit approval for the landfill, a subject that may please some and displease others. But the one thing I do want to assure this council, as I have assured many of you in private conversations, is that while a different decision for the landfill might have been reached in 1982 when we first opened it, or even in the early 1990s when Subtitle D was put in place, the best option for us, we strongly believe, is continued operation in a way that it can be an asset to the Cherokee Nation. And for all of us at C&B, our reputations and the future of C&B in part depends on the success of the landfill. And so I can assure everyone here that the landfill will be run with the utmost of professional standards. And for Ms. Fishing-Hawk and Mr. Crittenden, as I noted at the EPC meeting, they would certainly not associate themselves with my position, but the plans of C&B for the landfill have been invaluably aided by their many comments and concerns about the facility here. And so I welcome any phone calls, any questions. I'll be happy to meet with anyone personally or publicly to discuss the future of the landfill. As was reported in the media, we're anticipating about a $15 million investment over the next few months as we try to get the landfill back in compliance with various rules and construct a new cell. There will also be, we hope, another announcement on a project for C&B in the healthcare-related field in the next few weeks, something that will provide additional services for the Cherokee Nation, be a profitable enterprise, and also provide some jobs here in Cherokee County. So as we finalize that, we're excited about what we can announce to that. Much time has also been spent on something that will be on the agenda for later today, which is the Bank of America financing agreement. And I will wait for any comments about that particular agreement till that time, other than to say it has been a massive effort from all of the organizations to try to put together something in a very difficult credit climate right now, as you know from watching the news and reading the newspapers. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions about the landfill or any other projects. And I do look forward to talking to you in a few moments about the Bank of America agreement.
Any questions for Mr. Carson? Yes.
I've got one on the landfill perhaps, and you may have not got to this point yet, but on the operation of the landfill, is that going to be an in-house Cherokee Nation operation, or is it going to be a contract?
I will guarantee you it will be an in-house Cherokee Nation operation.
Thank you.
Any other? Yes, Ms. Jordan.
And did I get the indication from you the other day at the EPC meeting that you'll be looking at starting fresh with fresh faces and maybe looking at the leadership there?
Every person will be evaluated as to their future. I can't promise you, Councilwoman, that every person who currently is at the landfill will be replaced. But every person will be looked at, and what I promise you is that everyone will be held to standards of best-in-class landfill operations, and if they can't satisfy that, then they will be replaced with someone else. And again, I know for Ms. Fulbright and others, this is a great concern for them, and so I guess what I ask or assure you is that in a year from now, when we look at the landfill again, and I'm sure it will be looked at many times in the interim, you will see that this can be made an asset in a way that benefits the environment over there, that minimizes the financial damage to the Cherokee Nation of the landfill. And that for the people of Adair County, our plan is that if you are a Cherokee in Adair County, that you can use for your personal use the landfill for $1 a load or a de minimis price. And so we think it can be an asset for the area, for the individuals, that we can generate the funds for closure, and that, landfill is never, it is a dirty business, both metaphorically and literally, but that this can be done in a way that people will see the benefit of it.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Carson? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Baker.
Next is the Historical Society, Mr. Tilley.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Just have a brief report to give you, but things are going pretty good out at the Heritage Center from a financial standpoint as well as other things. The good news is that just in the past couple of weeks we were able to make a $25,000 payment on the long-term debt, so it's cutting half of the remainder. So it's around $25,000 is all that's left. We're excited about that. Some of the other contributed income is up. We're getting some grants that are looking pretty good, so things are looking good financially. Also, we are working with C&E Tourism on some projects, as I keep reporting. Hopefully I'll have some more concrete details to give you soon. And then the big thing that we're working on just today and tomorrow is we've got had 178 kids over there today, but we're expecting around 650 tomorrow. So we're going to be swamped with Indian Territory Day. So I encourage all of you to come out and see Education in Action and see these kids. It's quite an undertaking, and the staff is mobilized and ready to handle this. We've got good volunteers, so I encourage y'all to come see it. Be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Tilley? Thanks very much. Next is Career Services, Ms. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Well, good afternoon. I just want to say that Talking Leaves celebrated Women's History Month this past week on Tuesday, and I want to commend Meredith Fraley, Councilwoman Kara Cowan-Watts, and Jody Fishenhawk. Those three ladies came over and talked to our young ladies and staff, and we had an overwhelming turnout. And the staff, students, everybody was very complimentary of the presentations. It's very rewarding to have well-educated women on our tribal council and have them come over and mentor to our young ladies. And we were very proud of their accomplishments. And Janelle's going to come next year, maybe, if we can schedule her around her schedule. When the chief talks about our 3 initiatives, jobs, communities, and language, that's kind of what we're all about, is jobs. Today, if you go back home, go by the municipal building downtown, we have a job fair going on where we've partnered with the City of Tahlequah and the Tahlequah Chamber of Commerce. You'll see signs all out down through there. Well, our staff was out putting those signs up this morning, and we've got people down there working. They've had a really good turnout. But there is another one coming up. It's going to be at Mace County Tuesday, April 29th, and I would encourage you, if you haven't seen a huge job fair, this is one you want to go to. We had close to 6,000 people come through there for this one last year, and we're anticipating more this year, right, Chris? So we will be up there in April, and I have these things that I'd like, if there's not enough, maybe Shelley can make copies for you, but we'd like to put this up. We're partnering with Mid-America. Of course, some of you all were at the AERT groundbreaking a week ago Friday. That was exciting. I know that there's been a lot of notoriety about the EPA reports. Mr. Drinkwater assured me yesterday afternoon that all those reports are in and things are looking good. The construction trailer for Flint Co. will be pulling on the site probably this weekend, and they hope to start construction within the next couple of weeks, provided they get their okay from the EPA. We're excited about that because we'll be able to work with them in helping to recruit workers for that project. We're working with Facet down in our industrial park. There's a group of us that met with Brad's office about 2 weeks ago, and we're in the process of trying to work with them to secure more space for them so that they can keep the plant located there in Stillwell in the industrial park. And we're also working with the City of Stillwell to try to get the lagoon system fixed so that we can expand that industrial park. Facet's been in the industrial park for 30 years. The industrial park has been operable for about 30 years, but it can't grow without the infrastructure in place. And if there's one thing that the chief's committed to, it's jobs and seeing that we can grow. And the only way we're going to grow is to get that infrastructure in place. So with the infrastructure inside the government, working with Brad's office, hopefully we'll be able to get that accomplished here in the next couple of years. We have apprenticeship training going on. It's blueprint reading that's located over at Job Corps in the evenings. This is through some of the revenue that we're bringing in off of the tarot fees. We also have electrical apprenticeship training that's going to be starting. These are some of the classes that some of our contractors said that they would like to see in place for some of their workers, and they're the ones who we collected the fees off of, so we're trying to appease them with some of the training. We met with Cherokee Nation Industries. They have an aerospace contract that Brian has probably told you about. We're working with his HR office to assist them with some short-term training for about 160 people that will be employed on this 7-year contract that they have. And we're going to be networking with Votex so that their certification will carry if they decide to go to work someplace else other than CNI. So we're going to be working on that, and you'll see an announcement come out about that probably in about another week or two, if I get it written this Friday. So we'll be taking applications there at our Career Services office. John Overacker's been meeting with Flint Co., and we're trying to do some things with them to share with you as council members some of the things that's going on with some of our construction in the area so that you'll know when timelines are in place for various types of workers. And we're trying to develop a mini job fair on the construction end for that area. I think there is possibility that there may be a calozone company going in at the old Tyson building in Stillwell. I don't know if anybody knows about that, but I heard it this morning, so that would be some more jobs. We have jobs. I went up to the industrial park over the weekend, and there's signs all up through there where people are hiring. So if anybody wants a job, there's jobs out there, and we can direct them in the right direction. So send them our way. Thank you.
Are there any?
Got questions?
Ms. Jordan. Okay.
Oh,
Go ahead, Ms. Jordan.
Yes.
On John Overacker's report on Tribal Employment Rights Office.
Yes.
I had asked him if he would put the ownership below each one of these entities that they're asking us to either approve or reapprove. And I noticed he did on the ones that were like 100% owned, and sometimes he would put 51% owned. I would hope that all of the council would be interested in knowing who owns the other part of the business.
Did you request that in the last committee meeting, or did you request it in the work group meeting that we had
No, it was
last
in
week?
the last meeting.
Last meeting?
I think. So I think we maybe just had a miss.
Major, just 51% in the owner on those. If they want more, we can add the
Yeah.
other ones on there.
If
Okay.
you would just put all of the ownership.
Yes, we can do that.
I'm of the hopes that this body would be interested in seeing all of that information.
We can do that, no problem.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Oh, and also, I sent my regrets about not being able to come to your deal because I got the information too late.
Yes.
So don't count me out.
I won't. I'll be honest with you, I didn't start working on that until Thursday morning. We had a 5-year plan to do with Dallas on Job Corps, and I worked all day and part of the night Thursday
Well, I
working
got
on
your
it.
email on Monday that it was on Tuesday, and
Yeah.
of course Tuesday was already full, and I couldn't do anything about moving stuff around.
We'll get you
Even
next year.
More than a day.
We'll get you next
Okay.
year.
Ms. Watts?
So, we no longer approve these, or where are we at with it? I guess it'll be later in the agenda, never mind.
It will be later.
And I couldn't find it in the middle of the deal, so, and I know why now.
So do you all have any questions of the
I think it
report?
goes back to making sure that ton of information is included with all the
Okay.
other things. And-
Okay, all
And we
right.
appreciate all the work, because you guys, I know, that's a lot of details, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Also, I do have a question when we get to that. In the list we have, some of them have approved written by them and others says pending. Now, do we approve the entire list?
The reason that they're pending is because we wanted you to know, because sometimes you will call us and say that this electric company had put their application in. We wanted you to know that we do have their application, but because we don't have all of the documents, that the committee has tabled it until we can get the other documents. But we just wanted you to know that it's there.
Okay, because when we go to approve the list, we're only going to approve the ones that has
That
approved.
is correct. That is correct.
Okay.
And I think you all had requested us to give you that list so that you would know which applications we had in the works.
Right, yes, we did. But just wanted to clarify that so that everyone would be clear. when we get to
Okay.
that.
I also have flyers about our summer youth employment. It's called Summer Career Leadership Program, and it's still the summer youth program, but we're putting the career leadership on it because that's more of what it is this year, because we have our summer intern program and we have our literacy program, and we've redefined it. And I'm sending these out, Councilman Hoskins, Councilwoman Watts, and I can't remember, I think it might have been Jody. Anyway, 3 of you all contacted me about that, so I wanted to make sure you all had the information. And it has gone out in the newspapers.
Good. Are there any other questions for Ms. Kelly? Okay. Thanks very much, Nadia.
Thank you.
Next is Commerce, Ms. Knight.
Good afternoon. You all do have a copy of my written report, and I do have a couple of corrections on the lending dollars available on the second page. I'm not exactly sure. We reported some of those numbers incorrectly. On the IRP, we actually have $937,081 available. On the ICDBG adult, we actually have $614,287 available. And on the youth, it's $258,070 available. So the figures were reported incorrectly. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have about the report.
Are there any questions for Ms. Knight? Mr. Sutton?
On the community tourism, this is amping that up, or just kind of directing that, or are you directing that? Or?
We have a tourism coordinator on staff who actually just went to C&E. He just went to work for C&E, and so we're trying to fill that vacancy, and that's the position that does the contacts with the communities and does the work with them. We hope to have it filled in the next month. And when we do, I'll bring them and introduce them.
And you said with the he went to work for C&E, and is that an off branch of the tourism with that?
He's working for C&E Cultural Tourism now. He's one of their project managers.
Okay. Any other questions for Ms. Knight? Ms. Fisher?
Did you get my information on the mortgage assistance program that I asked for last month?
On the bankruptcies or the foreclosures?
Everything.
My understanding was David Sutherland submitted that information to you at the Community Services.
Okay, he's going to start it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Thanks very much, Ms. Knight.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Fraley?
Mr. Chairman, I requested this, I move to amend the agenda to include under item 2 under new business. There's a request to add certain items to that budget mod, and those are included here in front of you. And the second would be add item 3, it's a Bank of America lending agreement. That's under new business.
Okay. Okay, is there any discussion on amending the agenda to include these 2 items? Mr. Hoskins?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, could we get an explanation, particularly with respect, well, really with both of them, as to the lateness of the request? We had some discussion, I think, at our previous month's, perhaps Rules Committee meeting, where I think we certainly didn't adopt a rule, but we had a sense that we wanted to try to make sure these were submitted in a timely manner. And so I just wondered, can we get an explanation as to why these are on before we vote on this? Because this is a late request.
Okay, Mr. Carson on the Bank of America.
I can address the Bank of America issue. We certainly appreciate the desire of the council to have more than adequate time to look at documents of such fundamental importance. They were actually prepared. Drafts of these have been worked on for many weeks now. And about 10 days ago, they were ready to be submitted to the council. There were some folks who have key interests in this from outside our world who had some changes they wanted to be made to it at the 11th hour. And so rather than submit to the council a document that wasn't in final form, we chose to incorporate those comments and make them in final form. Said, regrettably, we didn't get them in advance of the 10-day period, and that's my personal decision, for which I will take responsibility. And I would just note that I wouldn't be here presenting this if it weren't of such fundamental importance and of such a time was of such an essence. And I think Mr. Stewart, Mr. Walcott, who are here, Jim Carrington from my office, are all here because of that issue. And so I do deeply apologize for your concerns about the timeliness of it. We did try to satisfy those, but the need to present it in final form necessitated a bit of a delay.
Mr. Carson, what's the consequence if we don't amend the agenda and we have to move this on to the next Executive Finance Committee or a special meeting that might be as much as 2 weeks away?
Well, the timeliness is demanded by a couple of issues. One, of course, the credit markets are very difficult right now, perhaps getting even worse. Also, we have tremendous capital projects ongoing. We need to close the loan to meet our internal requirements, and of course, we have concerns about the markets in the first week in May. And we won't be able to close on the loan. It will be delayed by at least a month if we don't pass this today. And that is why we are here asking for a special dispensation, if you will, to address it today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and Ms. Fletcher.
Thank you. I can address the request to add 2 items to the budget mod. The first one is contract health. I met with Melissa Gower, and it was brought to my attention that during the budget hearings, we provided approximately 5 months' worth of funding based on historical usage, and it was at a point where what has been obligated, she needed more budget authority. That was why I requested that be added today. The other item is the Constitutional Defense Fund, and there have been some there's been some activity in that, and we do need to get some additional funds appropriated for that.
What's the consequence if we put this off to the next meeting, or we put this into a special meeting where there's sufficient time?
For the contract health, we would more than likely have to stop obligating funds. And what that means is when people come to the clinics, we wouldn't be able to say, Yes, we have funds that we can provide for your treatment. The funds have been obligated up through, I believe it was the end of February, middle of March. The existing budget has been obligated. And on the Constitutional Defense Fund, I can, Diane or Melanie may be able to speak more clearly to that. But as you're aware, a lot of that is related to attorney fees and ongoing activities. So we really need to be able to add to that budget in order to continue our contracts.
Will we literally not be able to pay attorney's fees if we don't do this today?
I'll let Diane answer that.
I believe where we're at is that we've paid everything that we've got except the February bill. We don't have enough to pay all of that. Is that correct? This is Sonia Glory. She's my money cruncher.
Yes.
That's correct?
Yes.
So we have a bigger bill than we have money left.
The January.
Shirley, any other questions? Ms. Fishinghall?
How much did it exceed the monetary? How much is the bill? What's the difference between February bill and...
The total, let's see. We have a balance of $101,000 in the purchase order, which is the law firm that's handling the Friedman case out of Washington, D.C. And that's the balance that we have encumbered. The February bill, just for the appeal alone, is $173,000. And we should, we anticipate March, the bill for March next week, so.
Any other question? Ms. Fishinghall, okay, Mr. Evans.
Are there all the invoices or at least the contracts in the system?
No. Oh, the contracts?
The
Yes.
contracts?
Yes.
They are in the system?
Yes.
So I ran a report on this yesterday, and it appears there's $224,000 of unobligated budget funds.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. We're really right now just considering whether to amend the agenda.
Yes.
I just want to make sure.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Call for question.
Okay. All in favor of amending the agenda, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion carried. Okay. Next item are consent items. First is the cemetery restoration assistance applications. And part of those were sent out, and there's also an addition that was passed out today.
Mr. Chair, move to approve all six. I believe there's 6 total.
I believe there's 7.
Or 7. The ones in our book plus the ones we got today.
Okay.
Point of clarification, that's the cemetery, right?
Yes.
Cemetery restoration.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next are the tarot certifications. And remember that we're only approving the ones that has approved written at the side. And I'd entertain a motion for their approval.
So moved.
Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I have a
Yes.
friendly amendment. I would like to put Crosland on hold pending a newspaper article I was informed about a takeover from a non-Indian company. So we need to do more investigation with them and clarify some things.
I'd accept that.
Mr. Soap, will you also accept that?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next are the law enforcement requests. Mr. Evans?
Okay. In addition to what went out in your packets, there are 2 additional law enforcement requests, both of them from Mr. Hoskin. Nowata Police Department, $1,500 for ballistic vests, and the Bonita Police Department, $1,000 to help with a vehicle.
Move to approve. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next is community assistance.
There are 2 items in addition to what was sent out in your packets. Also for Mr. Hoskin, 500 Oklahoma Union Public School for Indian Education Awards Program and Salvation Army Child Nutrition in the Backpack Program for 2,000.
Motion to pass all.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next are the roads.
Mr. Chairman, the roads memo went out, and I'd like to ask the body to consider adding one additional item. As you noticed that Mr. Buzzard and Mr. Snell was splitting some funding on motor fuels for the Steely Baptist Church Road project, and Mr. Buzzard had a significant contribution to the Deer Lick Road Phase 5 of nearly $90,000. There's a reprogram up in District 5 for Mr. Buzzard for a low-water bridge from Jeffries over to the Ross Acre Road project. And in addition to that, Mr. Thornton is requesting a Sugar Hill, it's not a typo, I was told. Sugar, I can't say the other word, Hill Road project for $1436.
Move to approve with additions.
So here's, okay. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Please, Doug. Next is old business, and there is none.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
bring those kids in just.
Okay. Yes. Mr. Buzzard is, as the chair, to allow an introduction of some students from the University of Chicago that are here working on our community building.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing us to do this.
Would you like to tell us more about what?
Yes, these are, just come on in. We're not crowded up to that. Just stand in place back. These are a group of kids that came out on their spring break. Actually, they're from the University of Illinois at Chicago. Have I got that right? Yeah. And what they did is taken their spring break off to come out and work for the Cherokee Nation. And what they've done so far is work there in our community, in Newton Community, Delaware County. So I want them to come by this afternoon so we can recognize them, let them visit with the council. Sorry we don't have enough chairs. We might have enough chairs if you guys like to stay. But anyway, I'd like for everybody to give these students a hand if they would.
Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, sure. My name is Anand Sandasera.
And where you're from?
Yeah, actually I was born and raised in Chicago.
Okay.
And I'm the site leader for this group. There's 9 of us. So.
Okay. Hello, I'm Ocean Kenny. I live in Chicago. I'm originally from Ireland. I'm just a participant in the group, that's all.
Hi, my name is Paul Hatsuri. I'm from Chicago too, but I'm originally from Japan and I'm exchange student in Chicago.
Hi guys, my name is Tavis and I'm originally from Lithuania. I came to the United States 5 years ago and now I'm going to UIC like the rest of us and it's been really nice to meet you guys.
I'm Parth. I'm from Chicago.
I'm Julie Kane, and I'm also from Chicago, but my parents are from Southern Illinois.
I'm Susan Kang. I was born and raised in Chicago.
I'm Priya, and I'm also from Chicago.
What they've done so far is we have a community building that's being constructed there in Uchi and a community there in Delaware County. I think yesterday they went out and laid the concrete, poured the concrete floor. I think tomorrow, Friday, they're actually going to be standing the walls up out there. So I just wanted to come by and see what the council's doing today and introduce these folks to you also.
Mr. Garvin, did you have?
I have one question. How many claim to be Democrats?
Okay.
Should we raise our hand for that one?
Certainly, I don't think we should. We certainly appreciate your taking your time. And we hope you come back to visit us.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
We really, yeah, we do want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We had a really good time. We came here last Saturday. We're leaving this Saturday, and so we stayed the whole week. And everyone here is really hospitable and really kind to us, and we really appreciate that generosity. We learned a lot about the Cherokee culture. So thank you.
Good.
We had one more to come in here. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, my name is Teresa Mariano. I was born and raised in Chicago.
Thank you. Okay, well, you're welcome to stay. Thank you.
Once again, thank you, Mr. Busser. Okay, under new business, item 1 is the lighting supplemental funding request.
Yes.
Mr. Baker.
Mr. Chairman, we have talked about this. We have talked about research that we actually could buy propane cheaper in the summertime than we could the winter. We have been told that if we were to give this $200,000, that $100,000 would come back to us from the federal government in additional funds for match. And so I'm going to move at this time to the general fund $200,000 for the to do the propane for the elders and on their list in the summertime.
Call for questions.
Okay. Question's been called. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next is item 2, which is our budget mod. Mr. Evans.
This month,
Mr. Chair, point of order. Actually, the motion to amend made it item number 2 was the CNB resolution. And I have a plane to catch, so I'd appreciate being allowed to vote on that. And the amendment was for item number 2.
That's the budget mod.
I thought
No.
when you made the item number 2 was the CNB deal, actually.
No, we did not.
Motion.
No, it was
Okay.
not.
All right. Well, you guys have a good day. Thank you.
I can do this really quick. The March grants was an increase of $347,000, with majority of that being in the Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court, which had an in-kind adjustment on their grant. Mod 6 had 13 budgets with a net increase of $886,000, with lion's share of that being on the general fund. Charitable contributions is a net zero impact, but it's designating $5,000 of the undesignated balance for Safe Kids. The budget reflects the original $20,000 undesignated, and the budget still represents the amount of $10,000 for the mural home, $4,000 Oaks generator, and $5,000 Safe Kids, leaving a balance of $1,000. Item 2, the Gen Fund operations budget is requesting to reduce the transfer associated with the natural resource force account's prior year deficit of $67,859. I'll talk a little more about that in just a minute. Self-help emergency assistance, requesting a funding increase of slightly over $200,000 related to the weatherization program administered by Community Services Group. Rural Fire Stations is requesting an additional $2,609 in spending authority to include the Inola Volunteer Fire Department. Land Development is requesting a $411,000 increase to combine the natural resource force account budget with this budget, as well as recognize the debt service payments related to long-term debt. The indirect cost pool has an increase of $52,757 for the Evaluation and Compliance Department to absorb one additional full-time employee associated with the transfer of the Housing Authority employees. And I've got a note in there, it's a housekeeping note that I think we need to address. The indirect cost pool is designed to be a automatic recovering pool, so we budget it to break even, and then we just adjust the actual rate based on the actual incurrence the next year. But we always budget a zero net budget on this, and last month we budgeted a net increase, a net decrease of $49,000 in the indirect cost pool, and we need to adjust the indirect cost recovery for that, which is not in here. And like I said, it's just a technical issue that Callie and I can work out and have it ready for full council. Tribal Force Account Fund, again, it's a reduction of $170,000 to remove this budget and transfer it to the Land Development Account, as well as provide for the prior year's deficit of $198,619. And just as a note, the force accounts historically do not cover their expenses.
EPC projects, an increase of $20,000 for an inter-program agreement related to the Realty Department. The USDA funds increasing $300,000 for a new planning grant. The grant amount's $150,000, with the remaining $150,000 being matched by a transfer from NAHASDA. And that takes us into the NAHASDA fund. The item number 10, as you'll notice, is utilizing those funds that we're trying to leverage to get matched from USDA. Item 11, the resident services, career services, is an increase of $144,916 related to the unexpended balance from the prior year, which is a substantial amount of their funding from last year carrying over. Elderly housing and protective services of last year's of the 07 IHP is a decrease of $2,000 as a slight carryover adjustment. And resident services, human services department, is requesting a decrease of slightly over $4,500. And again, the only thing I saw in summary was the IDC pool needing technical correction there on the balancing act of that fund. The $200,000 that this body just considered for the propane. Is it your wishes to add that $200 to this mod? Yes. As an amendment to it. Okay, you will notice on the front of the act, before the $200,000, there was $238,000 of general fund available for appropriation. That leaves $38,666 for appropriation by this body for the rest of this year. Now, I know that there's an item you're going to consider in just a moment for carryover for $4.5 million, but there's also a request to go ahead and appropriate that $4.5 million. So just something that we need to be aware of, that the mid-year windfall carryover being put onto the table is also being appropriated right along with it. And with 6 months left in this year, we will have to reprogram previously approved budgets to provide for any appropriation need that you may have for the rest of this fiscal year. Just want to point that out. Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Ketcher, do you want to present the other items that were added to amend the agenda?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The first item is contract health, and it is an increase of $5 million, and the source of funds is $3 million unappropriated carryover from Gen Fund, and then transferring $2 million of the tobacco surtax budget to be used for contract health related to cancer and diabetes treatment. As I stated earlier, the existing budget for contract health was for $3 million. During our budget hearings, that was anticipated to cover approximately 5 months worth of need, so this would give the health department the funds to finish out the fiscal year. The Constitutional Defense Fund is requesting an increase of $1.5 million. The source of funds is also general fund unappropriated carryover. In my memo, I've noted some of the reasons for this increase. During the month of January, the nation had several filing deadlines related to appeals of the sovereignty issue that's in the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. During February, the District Court for Columbia issued a stay of the lower court case pending resolution in the Court of Appeals. And we're anticipating that there's going to be a lot more activity over the next few months, so this estimate is being requested to carry us through the end of this fiscal year.
Okay. Yes. Ms. Jordan.
Kelly, how much funds did we start out the year with that was unappropriated?
Unappropriated, I would have to go back and look, Councilor Jordan.
Doug, can you tell us that?
Sorry, off the top of my head.
I mean, each month, you know, we've been using a little of it, and we're down to $38,000 now. What did we start with?
I can get you that real quick.
I'll have to go look it up.
Okay. Yes.
Continuing on the $5 million on the contract services for healthcare, Melissa,
Yes.
Can you come up? Sure. Melissa, can you tell us how much of the first $3 million that we put in there has been used up?
All of it.
And where did we use it? What areas?
60% of it went to cancer, 22.5% went to return to work, 12.2% went to dentures, 2.75% went to eyeglasses, and 1.96% was in the medical equipment resource program.
Okay, and you believe you'll need $5 million to finish the year? Do you have some of that new money already encumbered or anticipated encumbering? How much?
I don't know the exact amount, but we have, our cancer is what the issue is. And when we approve a treatment plan, we're paid through, February, but we have those encumbered, those cases for the rest of the year, and I don't know what that is off the top of my head.
But as of March 27th, we've used the first $3 million.
Yes.
In all of the areas that we've just discussed.
Yes.
Okay. And then I guess I have a question of the constitutional fund.
Okay, Mr. Evans has answer to your other question.
The first question, 6.9 million is what we started with available funds.
Okay.
I just want to point out too, since we're transferring out of the surtax, 2 million, it's 2, isn't it? 2 million. We want to keep in mind that we do have legislation on the books that specifically ties those funds down for a purpose. So they have to be, we have to at least spend that much. I know you're not going to have any problem spending that much in cancer or diabetes, but we just want to keep that in mind that law's on the books.
Because she had said when you were out that she'd spent 60% of the $3 million for cancer, so we assume that 60% of the $5 million would also be spent for that.
And that's just through February, Doug.
I have no concern with it. Okay.
Did I
Yes.
still have 4?
Yes.
Diane? Yes, ma'am. On that 1.5 million?
Yes.
Those guys in Washington gave you all an estimate of what it was going to cost to do this litigation?
I don't know if they ever gave us a total estimate.
It says right here that cost incurred exceeded estimates.
Okay, I think that there was a base cost and then an hourly rate. The hourly rate has increased for some of the attorneys handling the case, and
Did we not have a contract?
we did, and there was increases built in.
Increases for
To
what?
their-
Did they
to
get
their
more
hourly rate.
smarter, or what's the deal? I
No,
mean-
they get it. No, they probably didn't.
We hope.
They got smarter about Indian law. We had a contract rate. The hourly rates were in there. The increases to the hourly rates annually were in there. And then the litigation costs have just exceeded what we anticipated that they would. 1 month was over $500,000 by itself, am I correct?
That's correct.
That was during the appeal stage.
How much have we? That's all.
Okay. So actually, it was a Cherokee Nation's estimate is what is falling low. Is that to a degree?
Yes. It was our internal estimate.
Right. Mr. Hoskin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Constitutional Defense Fund includes funds used for lobbying purposes as well as litigation.
It includes lobbying, both at the state and federal level. It includes some media response, public relations, those sorts of things, combating, as you know, that this issue has been fought as much in the press, maybe not as much, but certainly there's been a war going on there. Some of this money has gone to pay those people to address that. By far, I think the lion's share has gone to the litigation, however.
And all of the 1.5 million is going to litigation.
I think that the 1.5 is going to the Constitutional Defense Fund for all three.
Yeah, the 1.5 covers all those activities. It's not just litigation.
So Councilor Jordan was concerned, as I am, about the cost of litigation, but we don't know what portion of this increase actually is attributable to litigation. That's my concern, is I think we want a compelling reason to give this increase, but I don't think I can get my mind around what the compelling reason is if I don't know where the money's being spent.
I can tell you,
Estimates have been busted out.
I can tell you where we're at with litigation, and I can tell you what's coming up. As far as how the money, what the proportions are and the numbers, they're much better at that than I am. Tell you what we've accomplished in the federal litigation. I can also tell you that at some point we'll probably be having to take that back in-house. But we have accomplished a lot in the last few months, and what that is when we started this, when they took it over, it was right after we had gotten one stay denied. But they have had to fight at the district court level. I think that the plaintiffs are now on their third amended complaint. They've had to answer those. I don't recall, I think that there was another stay motion in there that they had to fight. They are the ones that filed the appeal, the appellate brief in the circuit court. There was a reply brief that had to be filed. The biggest thing so the litigation is proceeding, but the biggest thing that we have accomplished, other than not getting any stays entered against actions of our government, which of course is the biggest thing, is that the district court, Judge Kennedy, who initially ruled against us, has stayed any further action in his court pending the appeal in the circuit court. So that's where we are now. We've got oral arguments set, I believe, May 8th in the circuit court.
And you appreciate that my concern isn't so much, Paul, I do have concern about the attorney's fees, but...
Probably all of us who are attorneys think, boy, did I make a wrong career decision at some point.
I guess my concern is the need is for $1.5 million, and it's presented to us as we've got to make sure we can pay our lawyers because we've got to keep up this fight. But then the question in my mind is, well, really do we need more money for the lobbyists and the media people? Because I think it's maybe more compelling that we need to make sure we get the attorneys paid, keep in court, because that's mandatory. But how much of this money is actually going to the attorneys? And that's
Ms. Knight, I believe, was going to address that.
Can you guys address what the ratio's been?
Of the amounts paid so far out of the fund total, there are two smaller contracts that deal with what we call government relations work, primarily government relations and media work. We've paid $200,000, approximately less than that, for those two contracts so far this fiscal year. Those amounts were set in the contract. We've obligated them in the Constitutional Defense Fund, and those estimates haven't changed. What has changed is the amount of hourly billing we've experienced for the litigation portion of the contract. The amount actually paid on the firm that's doing the litigation has been a little less than $1 million. We have only paid through January on that contract and need to pay a February invoice. So that's sort of where we are with that. The hourly billing on the briefs that were developed is what has exceeded the estimates. We obligated the base contract amount for the entire year and have the funds for the base contract amount, but it's been the hourly billing that has exceeded the estimates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Jordan.
Melanie? Okay, if you got $500,000, would that not bring you current and get you through the May 8th oral arguments?
We have paid through January. We have an invoice for February. And how much
The
is that
February invoice, actually we have, let's see, $232,000 outstanding on the litigation.
And this is almost April, so you'd have another 200.
So we'd have
Right,
another.
we only have $100,000 right now encumbered under that contract.
See, here's my thought. We got to get control of this. I mean, if you allow me through my office to bill you unconditionally, I'll bill you out the kazoo, folks. We've got, I mean, all of us lawyers sitting in here are we're thinking the same thing. We might as well put it on the table.
On the record, I won't do that.
I
feel compelled to say that.
We've got to get a handle on these hourly fees. If we don't make them justify them, then Yeah, everybody in that firm, which if there's 100 lawyers, they're all gonna be in the same room at the same time, writing down their time. We've got to get a handle on it. And I say, folks, for this body to consider giving them $500,000 and saying justify what you're doing. And then come back to us the next month, or 2 months, or 3 months from now, and let's see that justification. Let's hold back that $1 million for contingencies that are gonna come up, of which you only have $38,000 now. It's either health or litigation. That's where you're at, because you all have nothing left in the pot for an emergency. This is all the funds are on the table right now. We need to think about, are we going to try to make a cut here so we have something held back? And I say, I'm an attorney, but hold their feet to the fire. Let's find out what's going on for all this money that we're sending up there.
Point of order. Is Councilor Jordan making a motion?
I'm making a motion that we give $500,000 to the Constitutional Fund. We give the $5 million to the health. Was it $5 million?
Yes, it's $5 million in total, $2 million from the surtax, $3 million from general fund.
And hold the $1 million for next month.
And what about the other budget items?
Well,
No,
and everything else we'll go ahead and
That was
pass.
added to.
But we're gonna hold $1 million and keep it on the table, and then you guys get something good concrete from this bunch in Washington as to why this money's we're just bleeding this money out every month. I know if I had clients like this, they just I love them. Hey, I would take them to supper every night. And that may be where some of our money's going.
Okay, so you made the motion and it's been seconded. They would approve all the budget items except for reducing the defense fund from 1.5 million to 500,000.
Yes.
Okay.
Need a second?
Yes, Mr. Baker, seconded.
We've got one.
Okay. Is there any discussion, further discussion?
I have a question.
Ms. Fraley,
And did
and
you-
then,
And did
oh,
you say
Mr. Busser.
hold the other $1 million in reserve until they come with some
Well, let's,
work being done?
hardly let's don't hold it in reserve. It's $1 million that's unexpended right now. It's like the $6.9 million that we have. It's on, it's a gin fund, $1 million that we have to appropriate to more needed issues at Cherokee Nation at this time.
Okay, Ms. Fraley, you.
It's just merely in an unappropriated status.
Yeah.
Is what it would be if you approve this.
It's like the $6.9 million.
Yeah, you wouldn't need to reserve it because it can't be expended without an appropriation.
Okay.
Ms. Fraley.
I just have a question for Diane. Sure. This won't hurt in any of your negotiations, really?
I don't think so.
Or with the court system?
I don't think so. I think we'll be fine for a month or so.
Agreed with her that we need to hold their feet to the fire. How do you plan to do that?
Well, they're just very expensive. I mean, they've been pretty good about giving us detailed statements and about, when they came to Oklahoma City for the mediation, only one attorney came. But they are just very, very expensive. They're a big firm and their rates are expensive. And, when we interviewed, we were looking for someone who could do all these things for us, who had the civil rights litigation, who had practiced in the D.C. courts, who knew that arena, who could do the appellate work and do the Hill work. And we're paying for it.
So this money that's unappropriated, if we spend it for something else and it's not there, then what?
I'll get in my paperwork to get certified in the Circuit Court of Appeals and District of Con.
Did you have a comment?
At that point, we'd need to look at our contingency reserve.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Then this is an act, so we'll have a roll call.
And just point of order, we've left the $1 million on the table right now, and we're voting on everything else.
Right, your motion included only 500,000 for the defense fund, and all the other items on the budget mod remain the same.
Point of order, we've amended the modification already, or what?
No. There was never a motion to approve the mod.
Okay.
This was the motion to approve the mod, and the motion is to pass the mod by reducing the one request from $1,500,000 to $500,000. Is everyone clear? Okay. Roll call.
Harley Buzzard,
Yes.
Julia Coates. Yes. Bradley Cobb,
No.
Joe Crittenden, Jody Fishinghawk.
Yes.
Meredith Fraley,
No.
Janelle Fulbright, Don Garvin,
Yes.
Chuck Hoskin Jr.,
Yes.
Tina Glory Jordan,
Yes.
Curtis Snell,
Yes.
Chris Soap,
Yes.
David Thornton,
Yes.
Kara Cowan Watts, Buell Anglin,
No.
Bill John Baker,
Yes.
Jack Baker.
No.
10 to 4.
Okay.
10 nay, 4 nay.
10 to 4. The motion carried. Okay. Next item is number 3, the Bank of America.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wouldn't be here today if this wasn't an issue of utmost importance. Let me give you a status update on the Bank of America agreement, which will also lay the groundwork for why this particular resolution is such great interest to us. We are near finalizing the agreement. We hope to close the Bank of America agreement in the first or second week of May. We think that's advisable for a number of reasons, a couple of which I mentioned at the presentation I made earlier, where the credit markets are softening. It's more and more difficult to get these kind of agreements through. At the same time, we have cranes building all across northeastern Oklahoma with Mr. Stewart's capital projects, and these have to be financed. And right now, we do not have enough cash flow to finance these projects unless this agreement closes. What we have here is something that the various banks that are involved in this deal have requested from us. I was here in September before this committee, in October before the full council, where we had some preliminary resolutions passed about waivers of sovereign immunity and such. This document has been drafted with the bank's counsel and with many stakeholders having a chance to look at it and bet that this is the language they want to close the deal. It is a bit more elaborate than was presented a few months ago for this reason. This is what's called a syndicated bank deal. Bank of America is who we've had a long-standing relationship with. This is a loan of such size that several banks are going to have to participate in it. This is standard bank practice and nothing to be concerned about. But as you syndicate the loan, where you're asking these other banks to participate, they all want to see certain things in the various documents. And many times their requirements are more arduous than the Bank of America's, simply because they don't have a long-standing relationship with us, as BMA does. So that is what we have here. I'd be happy to walk through it in detail with people. We'd be eager to answer questions. Attached to this was a term sheet, which outlines kind of the nature of the transaction.
Excuse me.
Doug, if you had a chance to look at this.
Yes, I have. I do have some questions. I had a few comments, and I've discussed some of my concerns with Speaker Fraser, and what those centered around was our past activities when it comes to these financing documents. First off, the body considered the financing resolution in, I believe, September, October of last year. At that point, it was, memory serves me correct, $125 million line of credit with two increase options of $25 million each. I think they were termed as tranches. Is that correct? Okay. But yet that document has not been closed yet.
Yes.
That loan. So we've not closed the loan.
This is the same loan.
Okay, so we're now in May trying to close the loan from last September's resolution.
Exactly.
Okay. Is the reason for the delay that it went from 175 in total to 225 million and become a syndicated loan? No. Or what is the reason for the delay?
The reason is it's extraordinarily complicated to do loans like this in Indian country. We have spent weeks negotiating various covenants, various requirements, provisions that are in some ways unprecedented. For example, that we can continue to pay the dividend to the tribe even if we're in default under the terms of the loan. These are things that high-powered lawyers in New York, 10 different bankers, C&E, CNB, the board of directors, and so going all of that, the size of the loan hasn't impacted it at all. It's the covenants, their requirements of us, the things we demanded of them, that have taken so long to get finalized.
This term sheet for this increased loan has covenant and restrictions in it. The other one did, correct?
Correct.
So we're adding to, yes, it
Just
increased $50 million, but it also is changing its face to some degree as well.
Well, clarification, the previous one didn't have a face. The previous one was more just of a waiver of sovereign immunity, giving C&E and CNB the right to waive sovereign immunity to do it. There was no term sheet previously on the agreement. The term sheet was just signed 10 days ago or 2 weeks ago.
There was a draft term sheet circulated to this body though last September.
No, there was
that
not.
laid out interest rates and
No.
Okay. I'll have to go back and look at my
Mr.
notes.
Carrington,
I'm not sure what I was looking at back
Was
in
it
September.
drafted? I'm
There
sorry,
was a
Kelly,
term
correct
sheet.
me. Jim, I don't believe there was a term sheet that was, there was no term sheet, or maybe there was one at the time.
There may be one at the time. I
Okay.
think the point of confusion may be that the most recent resolution was shortened to the point, and its main goal was to swap the parties, to put C&B as the borrower and C&E as the guarantor. So that is a short resolution. The resolution you have in front of you was a redraft of the one prior to that, which is very detailed, that the body considered when C&E originally asked for the loan.
In 2003.
Actually is after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. There were about 2 dozen drafts of the term sheet. So there well could have been a draft of the term sheet. My apologies for that. You now have the signed term sheet.
If I could clarify, I think they're both right.
Ms. Ketcher.
There was a resolution approved, I believe it was January of '07, which C&E was the borrower. The loan amount was 75 with an increase of another 50. The resolution in September, which swapped the borrower from C&E to C&B, did not have a term sheet, and I think the assumption was that the same terms and conditions.
No, that's
followed
exactly
that.
right. The January of '07 one definitely had a term sheet attached.
Right.
We could well have had a draft in September, I don't remember. There's been no final term sheet. The one that was signed and agreed to by the parties, and the only one signed and agreed to, was attached to this resolution.
The other thing that stuck out in my mind when I was going over the document was we say that this is of the essence. This is time sensitive. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because due to the fact that there's such a substantial amount of investable capital on the balance sheet right now, and historically we've never utilized these lines of credit for capital expansions, but yet we're saying that it's not only time sensitive, but when you look at it and read the document, there's indications in there of this continued material adverse effect, or what's now being termed a non-interference agreement, that has to be agreed to between the nation and the bank, to where the nation's abilities to make governing decisions, specifically like by this body, could be deemed by somebody that doesn't say who, could have a material adverse effect on this loan document and automatically put us in default.
Sure. Let me address a couple of those things. Time is of the essence. And Mr. Stewart and Mr. Walcott could talk about the ambitious capital plans there. We estimate that we're going to have to dip into this loan and take it to its very maximum, according to the budget at least, in a very short time. There is cash on the balance sheet, but it is in the strategic cash fund, as it's called, and we are choosing right now to not avail ourselves of that because it's invested in some bonds that are not as liquid as they used to be given the current market conditions. And so, given our needs and the current financial situation, we're going to be dipping into this in a matter of a very few months and go into it rapidly. If we don't have this, when I say time is of the essence, it's not the usual hyperbole. If we don't have this approved in early May, we're going to have to look at our capital plans. At the same time, the credit markets are very sketchy right now because of the subprime meltdown and other things. And with that, there are no doubt many events from what Congress is looking into what we're doing here that make our credit worthiness to New York City bankers, a source of some interest, to say the least. So time is of the essence. About the non-interference agreement, in 2003, C&E signed a credit agreement with Bank of America. And at that time, the nation signed a non-interference agreement. It is a fairly benign document, not controversial. They're asking for the same thing here, where basically says this: the nation cannot be enacting things that put the business enterprises in default under the agreement. A couple of examples of what that might be. Dissolving C&E would be an example of that. Dissolving C&B would be an example. They want the security for this loan are the gaming revenues. And so another example would be if the nation formed an alternative gaming enterprise, say a new CN something that was going to be involved in casinos, and they wouldn't have access to those particular resources. And so this was signed in 2003 by the nation as part of that. They're asking for it again. And it is, I think, the opinion of our side, our outside counsel, inside counsel, that it is a reasonable request.
The only reason I brought it up is because I haven't seen it, and I'm not sure if anyone has. Did you ever get it, Ms. Speaker?
I got it today at noon, but I understand it's still in negotiation.
She saw a draft of it today. It's still being negotiated, and it will be finalized at the closing of that. It will basically say, as the 03 agreement passed by this council, it'll have one point, which is the skeleton. The remainder will be flesh, which is that the nation cannot put C&E or C&B into default under the agreements. Okay. The rest will be largely boilerplate and things such as that.
Okay. And let me just bring out one other point, and then I'll be done, Mr. Chairman. If, for instance, this council decided to raise the dividend rate, would that interference agreement engage or be interpreted as having a material adverse effect on the bank if you were still able to maintain your covenant ratios?
No.
Thank you.
Mr. Hoskin?
Well, I think Mr. Evans went right down the road I'd like to go down, and I appreciate him doing it because he does it with more expertise than I bring to the questioning. That takes me back to September when I tried without success to alter the language of the resolution to what was, in my view, a way to preserve the council's right to, if we saw fit, to increase it to 35%, the dividend, so that there were no surprises. Bank of America would understand that that was possible. That was not successful at that time, and one of the impression that I got was that increasing it to 35% would actually trigger that. That Bank of America would look at some provision, some black and white language, and say, that clearly violates it. Now, I haven't seen the non-interference agreement, but from what your answer to Mr. Evans' questions, it does implicate that agreement, the non-interference agreement. At least if we increase the rate, we would look to that agreement and say, did that interfere with the business operation?
Yes.
Is that true? But it's conditional somewhat because, as you say, and I don't recall the precise technical language, but not under every circumstance would it actually trigger that agreement and cause Bank of America to say that we were interfering with the business operations.
Yes.
If I look to the document I do have, the supporting document I do have, the summary terms and conditions, there's the only reference in here to our dividend is found on page 13, where it speaks to what happens upon default. It guarantees that C&B could continue to send the 30% dividend back to Cherokee Nation. That just means in default. So, it seems to me we're able to increase the dividend to 35%. The only time that we have to worry about it going to 30%, we can do it any number, is if we're in default. At least according to the black and white document I have in front of me. And again, I haven't seen the non-interference agreement, but it just seems to me we need to see that non-interference agreement and have a discussion about it, because I really feel like 30% is not a magic number. I really feel like the sky will not fall if we went up. We might have a discussion about that, but it seems to me we've sort of handcuffed ourselves when we say, well, it'll trigger something if we try to increase this dividend. It'll wreck the whole deal. I think what we're finding out is, in fact, it won't wreck the whole deal if we were to increase this dividend. So this has been a real eye-opening exchange between you and Mr. Evans.
Sure. I mean, let me explain. I mean, it's been the subject of constant negotiations. I mentioned there's been a couple of dozen drafts of that term sheet that you're looking at there. We have definitive documents, which will be the ones actually signed to memorialize this agreement, that we just received yesterday and that the lawyers are now looking at. We believe we've negotiated a very good agreement for the nation. If the bank had their druthers, there would be no dividend to the tribe at all, because that is taking away from the cash flow available to them. Obviously, we have a different interest in this. In previous agreements, we couldn't pay a single dollar of dividend payments to the nation if we were in default. Now we have the right to pay 30% of our net income, even if we're in default, which is extraordinarily unusual. The non-interference agreement won't speak to that issue at all. It will simply say, in rather generic language, don't put the businesses into default. The definitive documents will define what default is, and as they are currently being drafted, they are going to say something like this. We still have the right, if we're in default, to give 30%. If the council chose to raise the dividend, the bank isn't going to be greatly concerned unless by raising the dividend you would put it into default, which seems a very reasonable provision as well. We could pay 30% even if default. If the council wants to raise it above that, well, the bank doesn't really care unless you're close to default. And if that money puts them in default, then the bank is going to say in the agreement itself, no. Again, that's a far cry from what we had previously, where you could pay nothing if we were in default.
Well, yes. That is refreshing to hear, because before I served on the council, the chief vetoed the Health Act, and one of the reasons, and again, I only know what I read, is that there was a concern that Bank of America would bristle at increasing the dividend, and we didn't want to wreck our relationship with Bank of America. In fact, I think it was either in his veto message or it was in media reports of what he said. And I know you're not the administration, but I think what we're hearing now is we really can increase that dividend. We just have to be concerned we're not going to put C&B in default. So we can have a discussion about increasing the dividend. We don't have to be fearful that there's this artificial ceiling mandated by Bank of America. We just have to satisfy ourselves that we're not putting C&B in default. So I think this could open up new opportunities for us to discuss increasing the dividend, and I appreciate it.
I just want to make sure. I think you should be happy with the way negotiations on this are going. The bank will definitely bristle at raising the dividend. That is for sure. Again, it takes money that they could otherwise access. But the way it is currently being drafted, our concern is about whether we meet the covenants or not. That's the bank's key concern. So I don't want to overstate the case to you about that. But I do think that the terms of this deal as being negotiated are better ones for us than previously.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Ms. Jordan.
Just a couple of questions. Brad, as we've seen from a previous meeting that we had at 1 o'clock, the ability to appeal an arbitration decision appears to be quite important. On page 15
of the term sheet or the
of your attached sheet.
Summary of terms and conditions?
Okay, where it talks about arbitration and waiver of jury trial.
Yep.
It's like the last page of everything that's attached.
Got
it. Do we have any assurance there that we have a right of appeal if we don't like the arbitrator's decision?
It's a good question. Again, that'll be addressed more explicitly in the definitive documents such as that. Jim, do you have a response to that, since you've been involved in that? What the bank is looking for about some of the arbitration issues and our right to appeal?
Yeah, at this point, I can basically just echo the language that we have. We've not fleshed this out in the document. I assume it will be consistent with this. So, and I was unable to find the sentence you were looking for real quickly, or I might be able to explain it.
She wants to know whether we have the right to appeal. We will endeavor to put that into the definitive documents.
There's no reference to a right of appeal. And, of course, from the standpoint of legal background, you never want the door plumb closed. You always want to be able to look to another step. and we found out in a previous meeting, we agreed to an arbitration that had no appeal rights. So can you check on that?
I can check on it and also point out a couple of other things. One is that we are also involved in arbitration. CNI is in fact in arbitration with the same rules, AAA, commercial rules, and as is also the case there and is governed by the rules, that's actually also non-appealable except in very limited circumstances. I believe you can appeal it to the extent that the procedures weren't followed or something pretty extraordinary. But that seems to be the way that the AAA operates, and that is intended to be sort of the court of last resort. I'd also point out...
First and only court then.
Well, no, not exactly. The other thing I wanted to point out is that really the arbitration is not mandatory here. Both parties have a right to choose to go to arbitration. However, both parties can also go to court, and we have defined, luckily, which courts we would go to as defined. Yes, and so we can, and those can be appealed as ordinary course of business in the courts. So once you decide to go to arbitration, the parties are basically saying, we're going to go to arbitration, we'll keep it in arbitration. If there's an award, it's enforced through the court system as usual, but that's where it begins and ends once you decide to go there.
Okay.
So that's been my normal course.
So what you're saying, but it looks like on the first paragraph of page 15, that what you're allowing yourself to go to court on
Yes.
is the waiver of sovereign immunity. And then the arbitration, it looks like, which is this next paragraph on page 15, might be anything that might arise under any other portion of your agreement. See, it looks to me like you're only going to court on arguing your sovereign immunity issue.
I read it a little differently. I'll try to paraphrase it from the section beginning with limited waiver of sovereign immunity. The borrower, etc. We provide the sovereign immunity from suit and consent to be sued, okay, with respect to the borrower to enforce the obligations under the credit facilities. So there we are, in fact, granting a waiver and agreeing to be sued on the loan itself.
Well, let's just
in court.
if we can, let's just make it real clear that we've got a way to appeal if we desire to do so.
In fact, I think it even mentions an appeal in here as well.
We will endeavor to include that in the definitive documents.
Then my second question,
Including right of
I think probably is to Brad. I somewhere had in the back of my mind that last year we approved a $125 million line of credit.
That's right.
This paperwork, of which I've just been able to skim because it came to us so late, if there's any way, maybe it could come earlier next time. With all due respect to you, we got
Understood. And again, my apologies.
It looks like line A is for almost $50 million, line B is for $125 million. So are you asking us for another $50 million line of credit?
Yes. I mean, basically what we're saying here is, and I would ask Mr. Stewart to join me here to talk about the $49 million is what this line, second line is. We have cash in the bank today, invested in various securities. This is not the time to liquidate those securities, given the perilous state of the markets. And so what Bank of America has agreed to give to us is a fully secured loan against those investments, which are with the Bank of America, where we can have the cash today at a very minimal interest rate. In fact, the return on the securities we think will be greater than the interest rate. We can have the cash today without having to sell our securities into a very bearish market.
And those securities are the ones, the item that will satisfy the extra $50 million.
Exactly. There's $50 million in those accounts, and so the loan, and you'll see the terms of it, as we choose to liquidate it, the availability of that fund decreases. So for example, there's $49 million today. If we choose to liquidate $10 million of it tomorrow, that facility becomes $39 million. So it's perfectly secured dollar for dollar with the amount that is in that account. So that's why we're asking for just the right to have that dollar for dollar offset.
But I just want everyone on this body to understand, you approved $125 million before, they're asking for extra $50 million today. So not only are they asking for this document to be approved, but within this document, there's an extra $50 million that you never considered before, just so everybody understands.
That is correct.
Mr. Oscar, do you have?
I would.
Okay. Ms. Frager.
Mr. Chair, can you speak to that?
Well, actually, there's 50 for the Columbia Fund that is secured, and then there's 125 plus another 50. That's right.
That's right.
Yeah, so
An option. An option.
an option for another 50. So there's three tranches, if you want to think about it that way. There's 125, there's 50, and then there's actually 49 that is against this Columbia Fund. And that is to facilitate the liquidity of dollars that we already own that may or may not be liquidated due to illiquidity in the market. So we don't want to take those monies and liquidate them at a fire sale price. So Bank of America has actually put this in place so that we can liquidate orderly. So that's what that $49 million is for. The rest of it is for capital expenditure. Is that fair, Brad?
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
So line A is the Columbia Fund.
The 49.
Right. 49 million. Then on page 2 of the attachment, the increase option, there's an extra 50 million here that you're requesting.
Right.
And then back up in that, on the same page, line B already contains the 125 million that we approved.
Right.
So basically, we're at 225 million.
Roughly.
Okay. You came in today with a line of credit of 125 million. You're going out today, if you approve this, just so everybody knows, 225 million is where you're at now.
Yeah, of which 50 is secured by the Columbia Fund, and that's an 18-month revolving, kind of a revolver line that is to facilitate orderly liquidation. So that 49 will actually terminate in 18 months.
Right, it's dollar for dollar against the cash in the account.
And that's something that we absolutely have to have. If we don't, then we will be going through a liquidation process at a fire sale price, which we do not want to do. So it's critical that we have that.
Mr. Evans, I just want to add, the 125 had a 50 option on top of that. See, we're really only increasing 50 million, but that 50 is directly tied to, it's a collateralized increase of a line because we don't want to go and cash out our 50 and incur investment losses. So we're borrowing against our own investment fund that's in Bank of America, and they're just adding it to this loan document, which can perpetuate longer than what it'll take to mature. But
I never want to interrupt someone who's selling me a life raft, but if I could just clarify. I'm drowning in the sea of China over here. The one you approved in September was for $75 and a $50 million. So it was $125 million then. We're basically asking for 125 plus 50. So it's about a $50 million increase plus what David has talked about in this Columbia Fund, the dollar for dollar offset.
On a much smaller scale, it's your CD at the bank
Yeah.
that you put up for a loan.
yeah. Right. My apologies. It is a $50 million increase. Yeah. Okay.
Only 50 million.
Only 50 million.
I believe.
I almost get my mouth shut just to
My
take
apologies. I got the 75 and the 125 mixed up. I mean, it keeps going up by 50 every time. But I do want to point out one thing, Mr. Chairman. We are in this pattern of increasing lines of credit. Granted, we have a history of never using those lines of credit. Now we've got a document that may or may not, depending on who interprets the word default, will it affect your ability to increase dividends in the future? I recommend that we all get a good understanding of what the word default here means. And one other thing, 4 months into this fiscal year, we have expended in capital assets $20 million for 4 months of this year.
C&E has.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution as
So
presented.
moved.
Second.
Okay, is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. Okay. One opposed. Okay. Are there any announcements? If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor say aye. Okay, we're adjourned. Before we lose the quorum.